Well, for today's coaching corner, I'm joined once again by my friend Jim Huerth, a 40-year banker who has spent a lot of time thinking about the subject that we're going to be talking about today, which is how to weave the wealth conversation into discussions with business customers. And I think this will be particularly relevant for commercial bankers, for business bankers, anybody calling on businesses who may have an interest in having a little different kind of conversation than the traditional commercial products, which arguably are important. Jim, you've thought about this. You've actually been on both sides as a banker. You've been a commercial banker. You've also been a wealth executive. What are some of your recommendations about how somebody who may not be an expert, I guess we should say that the more bankers I know who sort of shy away from this are worried about the fact that this is an area that could lead them to expose their ignorance. But we still believe that this is an important conversation. And is there a way for you to sort of guide people in how they ought to think about this?
Yes, Ned, I think it's very important. And many times what you and I have seen in our careers, bankers shy away from this general subject area for what you just described. Okay. And that is, I don't understand this. I think there are three simple questions one can ask and a little bit of outside prep work that will put you in the upper quartile of bankers with knowledge of wealth questions to ask. Also, the return factor here is that the more you understand about your client's wealth situation, the better banker you will be because you will get insights into the true value of the company and things of that nature.
Okay. So what would be the path to what are some of the questions you would ask of a business owner?
The first one would deal in the realm of protection. And people say, what are you talking about? Simply, you've been very successful, Mr. or Ms. Entrepreneur. You've created a lot of value here. How do you protect that value? You have another track there is you have a partner with whom the two of you have been very successful. The three of you have been successful. What are you going to do when something happens to one of your partners? Because you and I have seen, Ned, companies that have to immediately sell or partnerships that have to be liquidated because there's no protection mechanism. And so you don't have to be an expert in that. You just need to bring that up. Listen well. You know, you and I've talked in our relationship over all these years. Many times I'll use the phrase, give them a good listening to. Mm-hmm. That's what this wealth piece is all about. Listen well. Some people have prepped quite well for this. Most of the clients with whom I've interacted have not. And that is something very important to think of the next day principle. What does the next day in the wealth world, in the banking world look like?
So just as a clarification, this could be a question that you could ask a successful entrepreneur, business person, really at any stage in their lives. You could be asking this question of somebody who's 32 years old.
Very much so. It is, and thank you for bringing that up. It's very applicable. What people have ingrained in their mind is this is a conversation for my old clients. No. What is that Chinese proverb? I'll probably screw it up, but the best time to have planted a tree is 20 years ago. The second best is today. And that's what this is all about, Ned. Plan early, plant the tree very early. If you have not, it's not time to panic in it, and it's not a subject that can't be fixed, if you will. And I think that protect piece is very important because you will learn a lot about the mindset, the insight. And many times in my career, what I've received back is, I never really thought about it, Jim. You know, we're just printing money here, or I'm having to work, 18 hours a day. And correct. But don't be so foolish that you don't dedicate 5 hours that down the road could end up costing $3 million, because that's a $600,000 an hour cost.
And the other thing that I guess this leads to is thinking about who the significant people are in the individual's life that you're talking about.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. The second question, to whom? Well, you've created this cash flow generating entity. To whom is it going? How is it going to get there? Who do you want to have? You can go so deep as, if you're a manufacturer, I would immediately say to someone, when they say, I don't know to whom it's going, there's nobody in my family. I really birthed this. You, sir, you, ma'am, are a perfect candidate for an ESOP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have the conversation. Tremendous tax advantages in an ESOP, and the employees get the business. Very powerful, Ned. And so that question, to whom, probably has brought more edification to the clients and my relationship management skills than any question I use in wealth management. Occasionally some people know, and at that stage you find out, oh, Jim, it's going to my daughter and her husband. This is the tax planning. This is how much we're gifting. We've set this up that this will be dealt with through Nevada. We already have a trust set up. And so that's something that really strikes me. Then I know it's handled. And so as a banker, that means my risk rating is actually improved on this credit. Mm-hmm. They have done a magnificent job. And if the founder of the company were to become incapacitated, everything's in place. Mm-hmm. Now,
that's not the typical response that you get, though, when you pose the question.
Correct. And what the banker has to be prepared for is, I don't know. Could that lower my risk grade from a 4A to a 4B? Yes, because you need to plan for it. If you don't plan for it, there will be the IRS to deal with. And I don't mean that in a threatening way. I'm not much of a political person at all. What I mean is it complicates it. And if someone has become incapacitated, that emotionally is hard enough, Ned. If you're trying to wrestle then with tax attorneys and the IRS to figure out how to extract this thing and keep this thing moving, that becomes just, for some people, mentally insurmountable.
Yeah. Well, these are tough issues for sure. Mm-hmm. Perhaps one of the biggest issues is facing an owner who's trying to decide what happens to this thing that they have poured so much of their time and their soul into. So it probably leads to sort of the third question about what would you really want to ask them?
Correct. That's the third question, Ned. And thank you for bringing that up. Is the hard exit. Okay, so you don't have an immediate idea of how to pass this through. Well, the hard exit is you better figure out the valuation of the company and know what you're dealing with. This is actually a very interesting surprise. More times than not, I have clients that are at the or that go into the third question or reach the third question. The hard exit, you must know the value of the company. More times than not, they're surprised at how valuable their company really is.
So it's worth more than they think it's worth.
Correct. Because someone would say, well, Jim, I'm not pulling much out of it. Our family lives through the company. We all our vacations are destination vacations dealing with the subject matter of my company and so forth. So we get a tax advantage there. But there's really not much here. Then you find out through external evaluation, which really is not expensive, and there are CPAs who specialize in this and CFAs who do as well. Hey, this thing's worth $6 million. I mean, I started it with $100 coming out of college. It's worth $6 million? Yes. So when you don't have question 2 readily answered, identified, and structured, you've got a problem. But it's a good problem. Your entity is more valuable than you thought it was. So what are you going to do about it? And I've had people at this stage, Ned, have to sit down and say, wow, I probably ought to sell the company while I'm alive. That is a difficult one because when one has birthed the company and managed it all along through the ups and downs and the painful nights of worry, stepping away can be very hard. And so then you get into a lot of detail we won't go in today, strategic partnership, outright sale, the tax implications of taking a note, but all those things. But these are three questions, Ned, that I think will set any banker apart. It will help them also better understand the risk profile of their client. So there's a silver lining in here that you may find out that your risk isn't as strong as you thought it was, in that they have planned well, the company or the partnership is worth more than you thought. And so to me, that is something that, again, having been a bank CEO and a wealth CEO, I would say to all my banker friends, and when I'm wearing that banker hat, knowing answers to these three questions set us apart. So it brings us to a closure point, I think, Ned, in that the bankers our bankers usually tell me, Jim, I don't know enough to have this conversation, and I'm not like you. Well, good. I'm glad you're not. You're going to see something I don't see. Go get a book, a simple book, Trust and Estates for Dummies, something like that, 5-hour read. Go through it, highlight a few concepts. And that way you will be far more conversant than your average banker. And I think, Ned, that everything that we talk about goes back to relationship manager. Being able to ask these three questions, understand something, will make you a much stronger relationship manager. And I can think of a client today that thanks me all the time. And I started banking them in 1988 as an account officer. We're still in touch. He created magnificent Huerth. And to hear a client say, hey, thank you. And to think that you had one little piece because you asked three questions, a little piece of their success, that's very humbling. But from a 40-year banker, Ned, that's what it's all about, building and helping and strengthening folks.
That's great. That's a great way to end this. I do think that bankers would do well to buy that book. I think they do well to take advantage of any opportunities they have to learn from colleagues who may be able to explain some of this. But it is, as you point out, a way to really differentiate yourself. So, Jim, thanks for spending time with us. This Coaching Corner has a lot of good value for folks. I hope they pass it along. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ned. Appreciate it, my friend.